Earlier this year, AEW caused quite a stir when MMA legend and former WWE star Ronda Rousey appeared during the Revolution pay-per-view. It was moments after timeless Toni Storm defeated Marina Shafir when Rousey, one of Shafir's good friends, entered the ring from the crowd and silently called out Storm. The former women's champion marched back into the ring, but security intervened before anything could happen. It got lots of people talking, even though it led to nothing and was just a one-off moment for Rousey to promote her upcoming fight with Gina Carano. Austin shoving Tyson, this was not, but the moment did get me thinking back to when Rousey was a full-time competitor in WWE and the impact she had on their business. Remember, there was a period of time when this woman was the most popular athlete on the planet. A former Olympian in judo who entered competitive MMA in 2010, Rousey shot through the ranks of Strikeforce in dominant fashion before becoming the first female fighter to sign with the UFC. With the blessing of Roddy Piper to use his Rowdy nickname, Ronda became a fast-rising pop culture titan, a powerful woman in a male-dominated sport, one of the biggest draws in UFC history. And with Brock Lesnar doing so well, bridging the gap between the two worlds, and with Rousey a huge wrestling fan herself, it felt like it was only a matter of time before the baddest woman on the planet would make her presence felt in WWE. It turned out to be a long matter of time, but it did happen eventually. So with a few years removed from her time in the company, where does Rousey stack up amongst her fellow UFC crossover stars like Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, or Cain Velasquez? Snicker. This week, we're gonna knuckle up, go real hard on the smoky eye, and revisit the time when Ronda Rousey had a grip on WWE. But first, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit the bell icon to get all the notifications. Let's begin. The first time WWE fans saw Rousey on their screens came at SummerSlam 2014 when she and her good friends Shayna Baszler, Marina Shafir, and Jessamyn Duke, dubbed the Four Horsewomen because of their collective fandom, appeared in the front row. Rousey was even interviewed by the company website that evening and vaguely teased that a crossover could one day happen down the line. Then came WrestleMania 31 in Santa Clara, California the following year, and one of the most talked about moments of the whole show. After taking another piss on WCW's corpse in his match with Sting earlier in the night, Triple H appeared in the ring later on with wife Stephanie McMahon to gloat some more, only to be interrupted by a surprise return from The Rock. Steph did what Steph does and slapped Rocky, daring him to do something about it. That something was walking outside the ring and peering out into the crowd. There she was, the undefeated UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion Ronda Rousey, handpicked by The Rock to confront the authority. After a brief skirmish that saw Ronda and Rocky stand tall in the ring, the wrestling world was abuzz with speculation that this would set things up for a big tag team match the following year at WrestleMania 32. Ah yes, a show that was famous for following through on all the big plans they had for that year. But at the time, those brief flirtations with WWE were merely that, as Ronda still had the business of UFC to attend to. Well, about that.
She's in trouble. She's hurt. Holly looking to finish. She's out. It's over.
Don't worry, Ronda. Wrestling always keeps its doors open. Do you know how many other failed pro athletes have made it in this business? After two crushing defeats just over a year apart, Rousey's peak in MMA had come to an end. After her fight with Amanda Nunes, she had unofficially retired from the sport. Fast forward to 2017, when Rousey and the rest of the Horsewomen appeared at the Mae Young Classic in support of Baszler in the tournament. The ladies even had a brief confrontation with WWE's version of the Horsewomen in Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Bayley, and Sasha Banks. So after nearly 4 years of teasing between WWE and the Rowdy one, the first shot was officially fired at the turn of 2018. We go to that year's Royal Rumble, particularly historic due to the inclusion of the first ever Women's Rumble match, featuring a boatload of surprise returns and a whole lot of selling on the outside instead of in the ring for some reason. In the end, Asuka came away with the victory. Wow, what a huge moment! The winner of the first Women's Royal Rumble. That is a huge piece of history there. I tell you what, no one's going to forget the outcome of this match for as long as they...
And the opportunity of a lifetime. What? Ronda Rousey!
People often ask me if I ever get tired of these blatant interruption gags time and time again. And the answer, folks, is no. As part of her celebration, the women's champions of the time, Alexa Bliss and Charlotte, came to the ring to congratulate Asuka. But before the Empress of Tomorrow could decide which champ to fight at WrestleMania, all three ladies were immediately made to look lesser than once bad reputation blared over the speakers. The baddest woman on the planet, Ronda Rousey, had finally officially arrived in WWE, and she put the entire women's division on notice by smiling and pointing and smiling and pointing and smiling and pointing. Wow, what a badass! Folks, if I said it to a young Rocky Maivia in 1996, I've said it a million times. You can never smile enough! In the months leading up to her debut, Rousey had been training under Brian Kendrick at his school in California. At Elimination Chamber, Radiant Ronda came out for her official contract signing. Raw GM Kurt Angle, who by this point was having issues on air with Triple H, blurted out during the signing that Trips and Steph were only bringing Ronda in to punish her for what happened at Mania 3 years earlier. "Yeah, I'm gonna lock this bitch in for a whole lot of money. That'll teach her!" Angle kept stirring the pot, claiming that Triple H called Ronda a has-been, to which Rousey replied by slamming the H-Man through a table. Just what a has-been would do. Instantly earning her 1 quadrillion babyface points in the eyes of the WWE fans. On the Raw before Fastlane, it was made official. Double R would make her in-ring debut alongside a returning Kurt Angle to take on Triple H and Stephanie in a mixed tag match at WrestleMania. And let's give credit where it's due. That match brought the damn house down in New Orleans. On a night when AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura's first WWE encounter felt undercooked, John Cena got squashed by The Undertaker, a literal child won the Raw tag belts with Braun Strowman, and the Reigns-Lesnar rematch stunk out the joint. It turned out that seeing the former UFC champ kick Triple H's ass and put Stephanie in an armbar was what everyone wanted to see. Ronda in particular looked great out there, her moments in the ring executed as well as one could hope. The crowds on the road to WrestleMania weren't always the kindest for her, but at the end of that night, everyone was on Team Rousey. After making a big splash in her debut and even putting a little extra hurt on Stephanie on the following Raw, WWE showed some measured restraint in drawing out Ronda's first few storylines, by which I mean they gave her a title shot against Nia Jax in her second ever match 2 months later at Money in the Bank. Well, first of all, really quick turnaround by the authority in kayfabe to just give her that title match right away. But second of all, isn't that the kind of immediate push that fans generally frown upon, even if someone like Ronda is really talented? Well, I certainly hope the build for this match is good at least.
I have an obligatory title defense at Money in the Bank, and I'm challenging you.
I've only had one match, and I think there's a lot of other women that deserve that title shot before me.
That might be the case, but I'm not challenging them. I'm challenging you.
I accept your challenge.
That's right. There we go.
We make movies.
Then came their match at the pay-per-view that June. Much like at WrestleMania, Ronda came out of this match looking great in the ring despite her limited experience, the end result of weeks of training and rehearsing behind the scenes. But her winning the title wasn't meant to be on this night, as Alexa Bliss cashed in her mitbee she had won about an hour before and beat her old pal Nia to reclaim the title for herself, merely delaying the inevitable. Rousey's next match came in early August on Raw, an awkward squasharoo over Alicia Fox in that week's main event. It was given that slot because it was Rousey's in-ring TV debut a whole 7 months after she first debuted. The only thing fans had to wait for longer was for Veer Mahaan to stop coming. It was time to pay the piper at SummerSlam 2018 when Rousey routed Alexa in a quick and drama-free match to win the Raw Women's title, her first gold in WWE. She then retained the belt against Bliss at Hell in a Cell, a rematch with a little bit better storytelling than their previous encounter. So far, the Ronda Rousey experiment was working, at least for the most part. Her live TV segments were kind of hit and miss, and maybe her matches weren't 100% flawless, but she was hitting her marks where she had to. The live crowds dug her, and it didn't take her long for her to find her confidence and her voice in the ring. More importantly for WWE, Rousey's success was a major component in their multi-year effort to build the credibility of their much-maligned women's division. By inserting a well-known personality with legitimate credentials, credentials into a field of competitors who were being built into marketable names in their own right, the buzz surrounding the ladies of WWE had never been stronger, setting things up perfectly for evolution. October of 2018 saw WWE's first attempt at an all-women's pay-per-view in company history, which was to be headlined by Rousey defending her Raw Women's title against the recently returned Nikki Bella. And let's just say, a large portion of the fan base did not approve. When I think back on it, I think this was the start of when the tide really began to turn against Rousey. Because over on SmackDown, Becky Lynch was becoming the coolest character in the company despite being portrayed as a no-good heel. And fans thought her feud with Charlotte was far more interesting than Rousey fighting the Bella twins. In one promo, Ronda talked about the need to move on from the era the Bellas represented. Say, how's that sentiment going in 2026? The match itself was okay. It probably went on longer than it should have, but it wasn't the worst thing ever. It wasn't easy having to follow Becky and Charlotte's amazing last woman standing match, but Ronda and the Bellas made their way through it relatively unscathed. With Ronda and Becky both looking strong at the end of Evolution, anticipation was running rampant for their upcoming champion versus champion match at Survivor Series. But then, a funny thing happened.
Watch, boom! Right in the face of Becky Lynch, which is what caused the fractured face.
Well, we can look back and laugh at it now. A wild punch from Nia Jax put the SmackDown Women's Champ on the injured list with less than a week to go before Survivor Series, so Charlotte was slotted in to replace Becky against Rousey. It wasn't the match people wanted, but the two made up for it by beating the hell out of each other from the opening bell. The crowd in LA was hanging on every moment, cheering on the local hero and Rousey, and booing not Becky Lynch for not being Becky Lynch. Hey, speaking of which, remember earlier in the year when they tried turning Becky heel and it didn't stick because the fans liked what they were seeing? What's the harm in trying that again?
Rousey and Charlotte! No stick! Oh my God!
Oh dear! Somehow, Charlotte getting herself disqualified, then beating the hell out of Ronda along with everyone else who got in her way, turned her into a beloved character in an instant. What caused the supposed double turn to happen in the first place? In kayfabe, Ronda had done nothing wrong to Charlotte, yet the Staples Center went wild when she got beat down. Was it a sound of joy and acceptance to see Charlotte finally embrace the hate after she was weirdly pushed as a babyface for the last several months? Was it bloodlust just for the sake of it, regardless of who assaulted whom? Or was it the end result of a torrent of hilarious Twitter dunks by the beloved heel in Lynch? Hard to say for sure, but it's clear that something turned in the mind of Rousey after this night. Ronda wrapped up 2018 with a perfect record, punctuated with another fun match with Nia Jax at TLC, even better than their first encounter in my opinion. Again, it's worth noting that from a nuts and bolts standpoint, I thought that Ronda was succeeding. But if there's one thing wrestling fans hate more than somebody who loses too much, it's somebody who wins too much.
You know, if you can't dream big, ridiculous dreams, what's the use of dreaming at all?
It was a stupid idea from bad creative.
Not only that, despite the growing animosity from the fans, Ronda was still made to smile through it, for the time being at least. When you mix character stagnation with fan apathy, it can be a lethal combination for one's career. At this point, perhaps the only thing that could help restore Ronda's stock as a character would be for her to have that one-on-one match with Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. But well, that would be too easy a solution now, wouldn't it? Becky Lynch overcame her broken snoot and won the second ever Women's Royal Rumble, despite technically not being part of it. But if you thought that was the biggest issue in her journey to the WrestleMania main event, congratulations on successfully memory-holing WWE in 2019. You see, the man was just too wild and outspoken for the squares in charge of WWE, man, so she did what all the cool rebels do and apologized to Triple H and Stephanie for defying them. This generation's stone cold, everybody, and they wondered why their stars couldn't get over. But despite bending the knee to keep her title opportunity at WrestleMania against Rousey, Vince McMahon came out, said, "Psych, your apology doesn't mean shit." Then he brought out her replacement, SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair. Also, Becky is totes suspended. At Elimination Chamber, everyone died a little inside when Ronda beat Ruby Riott in mere seconds to retain the championship. She and Charlotte faced off in the ring, then Becky came out and assaulted both champions. This made the ladies so mad that they begged the authority figures to reinstate Becky so the three of them could face off in a winner-take-all match together in the main event of WrestleMania. Huh. That's not the greatest retaliation I could think of. I mean, if Ronda and Charlotte were smart, they could have just worked together to keep her out of the match and, deprive her a payday, something like that. But, yeah, that works too. Though I can see WWE's reasons for forcing Charlotte into Becky and Ronda's business, her winning a title late in the build for it to be glommed onto the historic Mania main event at the expense of both belts was not a popular choice in the eyes of many fans. They just wanted to see the unbeaten UFC lady take on the company's hottest new star. Especially because by now, Ronda was finally embracing her heelish tendencies. Her smile was now one of arrogance instead of cheerfulness. Her matches were shorter and they ended more viciously. The champ finally started fighting back against Becky on social media. Then came this little gem.
I meant that I'm going to disrespect the sport that they all love so much. Oh, don't break kayfabe, Ronda. It's scripted. It's made up. It's not real. None of those bitches can fucking touch me.
Oh yeah? Well, I think your makeup looks stupid. Yeah. Though she later admitted this controversial moment was itself a work, this blurring of the lines and her supposed disdain for the company she was making money from gave fans some much-needed justified ammunition to use against her. On the go-home Raw before WrestleMania, all three ladies waged war in a frenzied brawl featuring the most inept-looking fake police officers of all time. It was as if they were just learning what cops do as the scene went on. The payoff to all this came at MetLife Stadium for WrestleMania 35, with just minutes to go before a torrential downpour that would make a lot of people miserable as they waited for trains that did not come. Rousey, Flair, and Lynch made history in the main event. Well, about that.
Left leg, shoulders down, shoulders down, they did it!
Yeah! Oh, dang it doesn't feel the way it should. Despite the unavoidable controversy of Ronda's shoulder being off the canvas during the count, the decision stood. Ronda suffered her first loss in wrestling, and WrestleMania ended the way it was meant to, with the man standing tall. It was the last night fans would see Rousey in a WWE ring for nearly 3 years. As the women's revolution carried on without her, Rousey spent her downtime exploring her options in film and television while also starting a family with her husband Travis Brown. Then we jump ahead to the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble. In a match that was getting along perfectly well without her, Ronda made a surprise return to the company at number 28, eventually winning the whole shebang-a-bang. Despite teasing the heck out of it on the next episode of Raw, WWE avoided going the obvious route of putting Ronda and Becky in that one-on-one scenario, and instead had her challenge Charlotte Flair to a match for the SmackDown Women's title at Mania 38. We all know this is the match we really wanted to see at Mania 35 until that dang old Becky Lynch ruined it for us. The impact of Ronda's return to WWE was nowhere near as significant as her debut. Her time in mixed martial arts was even more of a distant memory, and her grip on popular culture had loosened considerably. Nevertheless, it was still a nice shot in the arm to the division to have her back. But even more surprising than her return, or even her being booked as a babyface again, was her loss to Charlotte at AT&T Stadium for the title. The two had a rematch of the I Quit variety 1 month later at Backlash, and of all the matches that were more or less repeats from Mania, I believe this one was the most improved. In the end, Ronda tapped into her mama bear powers to force the Queen to utter those two famous words and won the blue belt for the first time. The Rowdy one moved on to a brief program with real-life buddy and training partner Natalya. On an episode of SmackDown, Natalya did the old impersonate your opponent shtick, which honestly made Rousey more entertaining than ever.
I realized two things. The sharpshooter is way more deadly than the armbar, and that I don't stand a chance against Natalya at Money in the Bank.
And how did the champion respond?
I'm not going to pass up having kids and not miss a day of wrestling in 10 years. I'm also not going to mutilate my body chasing impossible industry beauty standards like you do.
Yeah, Natalya, you're a victim of the patriarchy. Their match at Money in the Bank was terrific, one of Ronda's smoothest performances since her return, but her victory over Natty was short-lived.
Performance. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
See what I did there? Because it was the style at the time, Liv Morgan cashed in her briefcase just after winning it less than 2 hours earlier, and after nearly tapping to the ankle lock, she managed to sneak away with a win, finally getting her due and winning her first singles gold in WWE. A rematch was set for SummerSlam in Nashville, with Liv now having to prove that her win at Money in the Bank wasn't a fluke, and she did so by winning in another flukish manner.
Morgan is screaming in pain. Ronda's shoulders are down. Wait a minute, Ronda's shoulders are down.
While the match was brief, it was served with a heaping spoonful of controversy, allowing Morgan to live, laugh, and love her way through another title defense. But by now, Ronda had had enough, and it was time for her to summon the power of those who came before her. It was time for Ronda to get in the zone. For assaulting the referee, Rousey spent the next month serving a suspension, but came back in time to become the #1 contender to Morgan's title at Extreme Rules. The plucky Morgan wanted to prove she could hang with Ronda by upping the ante to an Extreme Rules match, and woof, this was bad. Whenever the ladies tried to do anything involving a weapon, there was a really good chance of things going horribly wrong, or in the case of Liv versus Ronda's gi, hilariously wrong. In this instance, more was not better, but after a submission that turned kinda sexy at the end, Ronda finally beat Liv to become the champ once again. By this point, Rousey was portraying the character she should have been right when coming back, the dominant fighter who resented the fans for turning on her and now had a point to prove to the fickle fan base.
I gave them everything that I had, and I got nothing but hate for it. I ripped this title after Glitter Cinderella to spite them, because I don't want the best to win. They want their favorites to win.
Rousey continued to put in the work on the blue brand, snuffing out Emma's surprise return and beating Shotzi at Survivor Series. Then on the final SmackDown of the year on December 30th, Ronda pulled double duty. First, she came out on top in a competitive match with Raquel Rodriguez, but moments later, Charlotte Flair returned from time off from her injury and challenged Rousey to a rematch on the spot. In less than a minute, Flair shocked the crowd in Tampa when she countered Rousey's armbar into wrestling's most feared maneuver, the surprise roll-up, which, if I remember correctly, this outcome made the fans happy? Ronda took some time off after her loss, but came back to TV to start officially teaming with her bestie in Shayna Baszler, finally getting the chance to do something she had lobbied for forever. The duo won an exhibition at WrestleMania 39, and about a month later, they claimed the vacant women's tag team titles. They even absorbed the NXT version that June. Boy, it sure looks like things are going smoothly for Ronda and Shayna. I said, sure looks like things are going smoothly for Ronda and Shayna. No? Nothing? Okay, fine, whatever. I'll just say it. At Money in the Bank, Shayna...
What the hell? Shayna Baszler's assaulted her best friend!
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what happened. Thank you now for letting them know. Yeah. To the combined shock and delight of the London crowd, the Bays stabbed her partner and friend in the back mid-title match. Shayna explained that she'd always been resentful of Ronda's immediate push in WWE, while she herself paid her dues and worked the indies to get to the company before Ronda did.
We worked for you. We worked. I'm sorry. I don't recall seeing you beside me building rings just for a chance to work in front of maybe 30 people. I don't recall seeing you have to make an application. I don't recall seeing you at my tryout. Look at me!
Okay, not trying to be snarky or sarcastic with this next question. It's a genuine thought because I still don't know who exactly is supposed to be the babyface in this scenario. Rousey versus Baszler was a very interesting storyline, a tale of two women with very different perspectives of what their relationship was. I would like to theorize that it was this unclear shades of gray booking that made their big blow-off match at SummerSlam so poorly received, but who am I kidding? The match sucked. Instead of going the traditional route, these two crossover athletes settled their dispute in an MMA rules match. Knockouts or submissions only, no rope breaks, and not a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Ronda and Shayna know each other so
Baszler got one of the biggest wins in her career, making her former friend pass out to the Kirifuda clutch. Now let us never speak of this awful match again. Having recently witnessed a show overseas that was based entirely on matches with similar rules, and it being one of my favorite things of that weekend, I think I can see what they were trying to go for with this match. If you look at it in that context, let's say under ambition rules, then it was fine. The problem is, that kind of match is very different from traditional pro wrestling, especially in WWE, which prioritizes things like flashy moves, great camera angles, and lots of storytelling through body language. Going from matches like Ricochet versus Logan Paul and LA Knight winning a battle royal to this, and expecting the fans to maintain their interest, was a big request that the folks in Detroit could not fulfill.
I think the crowd, it wasn't for them at all.
After giving her friend the rub, Rousey's WWE deal expired, and that was the end of the baddest woman on the planet's time in the company. Aside from a one-off appearance in Ring of Honor in November that same year, and her much-talked-about appearance this past March at Revolution, Ronda has stayed out of wrestling, but hasn't ruled out the occasional match. But considering how her experience in WWE went, her feelings on Vince McMahon, and her apparent stance on their current ownership, it just might not be with them.
Sometimes I felt like instead of enabling us to have a great match, we were fighting against him in order to have a great match. I come back to the curtain, I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to my baby, I don't want your shit unless you actually have a plan for next week, which you don't. But Vince being gone really changes things a lot. I do love Triple H, I love Steph. I just need to get over my own hang-ups from the past.
Obviously, Ronda Rousey was successful in professional wrestling. She took to it extremely well and also had lots of help from a great cast of supporting characters both behind the camera and in front of it. Her brief time in WWE was instrumental in the success of their women's revolution, as eye-roll inducing of a phrase as that's become. The combination of Ronda's name recognition, Becky Lynch's meteoric popularity, and yes, Charlotte Flair's political pull all helped put their match front and center at WrestleMania 35. And while it was great to see Ronda come back for a spell and give back a little bit more than she did in her first run, by that point the novelty of her being in the company had dried up, so nothing she felt did quite as compelling as before, with the exception of her final feud with Shayna Baszler. And you know what? I'm still kinda ticked off we never got a horsewomen versus horsewomen match. Lots of folks will be watching this weekend when Rousey returns to the Octagon to battle Gina Carano, many of whom no doubt will be those who are fans of her in WWE. Whether or not she wins is of no concern to me, but I don't know, maybe she'll hit a Piper's Pit or something during the fight? That'd be cool, I guess. But what did you think about Ronda Rousey's time in WWE? Do you want to see her make a return to the squared circle? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret if you haven't, and don't forget to hit that bell icon. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.